All right. I'd like to welcome everyone that's paying attention to the channel Enlightenment through Addiction and Recovery. And jumping in tonight's program, we're going to be talking about step two. Step two. Step two in AA, step two in NA. And the reason for this video is because when I'm hearing a lot of sharing about the second step, people want to, when they hear that power greater than themselves, they immediately take it to the God concept. And as a God of your, or a God of their understanding, you know. And step two, it says, came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And then NA, they added the we. It's we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And I'm going to say this right off the rip. And I'm not trying to be controversial or in anything, but I think when people hear this step, a lot of misunderstanding goes towards it. Because people, when they hear that power greater than themselves, they automatically go to what? To God. Oh, this is God. This is God. They say a power greater than ourselves. And I say this, if you attribute a power greater than yourself to God, then what is step three saying? In step three, it says, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives. And what it says, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Step three specifically mentions the God word. And then it says, as we understand him. So it's giving you the freedom to have your own understanding to God. But in step two, it says what? To a power greater than ourselves. And I say that a power greater than yourself is not God. Or not only God. I remember when I was talking to an old timer in AA some 30 years ago, he pointed that out to me. He said, matter of fact, he was my first sponsor. His name was Frank. And he had 14 years sobriety. They used that term, sobriety. And he asked me what I thought a power greater than myself was. And I said, God. He said, you got a big ego, son. He said, a power greater than yourself could be anything. And went on to say, anything that could change your thinking in the moment. Now notice, in one of the reference books I'm going to use, it says, the second step is necessary if we expect to achieve ongoing recovery. It says the first step leaves us with the need to believe in something that can help us with our powerlessness, uselessness, and helplessness. But I'm going to back up. It says the second step is necessary if we expect to achieve ongoing recovery. It's necessary. And why is it necessary? I'm just going to cut to the chase. Two things happen in the moment: addiction and recovery. And in the recovery process, there's not room for both. Both can't be present at the same time. Either you're going to have recovery present or you're going to have addiction present. Now, some people, they don't come up with a God that's going to do anything they want them to do at any time. Well, God this, God that, and so forth. But I say, in order to be restored to sanity in the moment, you're going to need something that's going to change your thinking. Now, in one reference material, it says what? Addiction is a power greater than yourself. Matter of fact, I'm quoting that out of out the NA book. And if a person don't believe that alcohol or alcoholism is greater than oneself, then I don't know. We need to start rewriting recovery literature on both sides. That being said, is how can God be a power greater than yourself, and then addiction be a power greater than yourself? So I'm pointing to anything that'll change an individual's minds, and it's a lot of analogies out there. I've heard, you heard the one about you speeding down the street, you see a cop, what do? You step on the gas, and there's more and more out there. So going back, it's very, very necessary to have a step 2. Why? Because coming in, we learn about spiritual principles, or principles, period. Now, the question is if addiction is a power greater than yourself, what are some of the components of addiction? What is it? Or what is addiction? Addiction is obsessive thinking and compulsive behavior. It's the thoughts that run through an individual's mind that cause them to act out. Very simply, alcoholism, same way. A person's mind is focused on that drink. It's focused on the drink. And they will do anything, damn near, to get what? Another drink. So I'm going to leave my argument right there. That's why the second step says what? It says we came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And the conditional word is could. Why? Because if my mind is not open, and open-mindedness is the key principle of the second step, then I won't be restored to sanity. If my self-will is greater than my desire for open-mindedness, I will not be restored to sanity in the moment. I don't care what's going on. It could be a hurricane. It could be prayed over. It could be a gun. It could be. So that being said, looking at what? Step 12. For the people that haven't got to step 12 yet, just pay attention. In step 12, it says, we sought through prayer and meditation to improve our conscious contact with God as we understood him. Now there's the God word. God as we understood him, praying only for knowledge of his will for us and what? The power to carry that out. And that's the same power that's in step 2. So I'm asking what God's power is. The program. The principles of the program. The principles that's revealed in every step and every tradition of this program. That's what I'm saying it is. And I'm saying this. When it says the power to carry that out, when I get whatever it is, whatever I'm receiving through the prayer and meditation, I will have a choice. If I want to carry that revelation out or not. Why? Because that's what step 2 gives. Step 2 gives the choice. Where step 1 comes in and informs me that I was powerless. It says we admitted that we were powerless over our what? Over our addiction. And what did I say addiction what? Well, I didn't say it. And what do the basic text says addiction is? It says addiction is a what? Power greater than myself. So we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. And what is insanity? Unmanageability. Insanity is unmanageability. Exactly what it is. And it's in the extreme to where the person loses what? Consciousness. And it don't have to be a person. It could be a group of people. So unless I get a understanding of the step, then my recovery is going to be in danger. But the mercy of this step is this. The mercy of step 2 is that a person subconsciously will make a choice. That's why in Alcoholics Anonymous, what do they say? There's a saying they used to have. I haven't been to a meeting in over 30 years, but they used to have an actual saying that says, a person don't have to work the program. They can work step 1, step 2, and step 3. And then some would actually say you could 2-step it. Step 1 and step 2. Step 1 and step 2. Step 1 and step 2. They call it 2-stepping. And then some said 3-stepping. Now I'm going to throw this in here. One thing about the agnostic and the atheist, what they do have, since they don't quote unquote believe in God, they tend to be more principle or step 2 type of people. Because they understand that you take responsibility for your own recovery. Whereas the religious people or person, they'll say, God kept me clean today. But the agnostic or the atheist will say, I kept me clean today. And I go along with that. If I didn't pick it up, I kept me clean. Just like if I drank or I used, guess what happened? That's something I did. And it's a decision that I made. And the rationality or the rationale in my mind on why I did it is that power greater than myself for that moment. I go to meetings, man, and people talking about a power greater than myself is God. I'd be like, really? In my mind? In step 3, where it says, we made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. And people tend to manipulate God as they understand him, that word understanding. Half the stuff I hear people say about God, I don't believe. Because how can you understand something you ain't never seen? Please tell me. But what step 2 does is it reveals faith. But how do you get to faith? Through the principle. I say step 3 is when I make the decision to work the rest of the steps or the rest of the program, the traditions and the steps, bare minimum. Why? Because spiritual principles will be revealed. If you go to the step working guide or any AA material and you look at that material as far as steps concerned, you're going to hear about principles. One thing that 12-step recovery offers that religious programs don't focus on is principles, not God. As you get the God in your understanding. Why? Because the principles will come through the God, concept. That's how that's running. But you walk into a meet or you sit at a meet and they get on the second step and people swear to God that a power greater than themselves is is God. And they'll use the two terms, power greater than myself and God and higher power. They use higher power and power greater than myself synonymously. And you lying to yourself, because a power greater than yourself and a higher power is not the same. It is not the same. But when people run the literature through their mind, through their brain, and I'm going to give you a good example. Step one. People say, powerless. I'm powerless. Step one don't say I'm powerless. Step one says, we admitted that we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. But people say powerless and manageability. You have to say what the step says. And step one and step two and step three, all three steps says something entirely different. They don't say nothing the same way. Now, if you go to the narration, and I think a lot of people is confused, because when you read step two, it shows the progression from a power greater than the self to a higher power. If you sit back and just read it, and I'm not going to do that. So anyway, wrapping this video up, step one says we admitted that we were, and it says we were powerless over our addiction, that our lives had become unmanageable. And what that step is asking you to do is to take your bottom, the last time you used, or any experience that you're going through. For those that have been in the process for a while, it's asking you to take a look at it and write down your experience with powerlessness and unmanageability. That's why it says we admit it. Because when you take that inventory, that's the admission. And then it says, well, it leaves you with a void. And part of the void is because, and I'm going to say it in another term, when I admit that I was powerless, that I panicked, I went insane, unmanageable. Temporary insanity for some, and long-term insanity for most. But I'm looking at the experience. And the void is that, oh my God, help me. And if you're an atheist and agnostic, you're going to say, I need to find something. I need to come up with a solution. And then we get to the point we came to. And back in AA a long time ago, they actually had some literature, some second step literature. It was a magazine or something. And it was the second step. And it says, we came to believe. And how did I come to believe? Coming from outside of that void, that step two leaves, because that step one leaves, because when I look at step one, when I'm experiencing step one and I'm looking at the experience of step one that I had wrote down in the inventory process, what happens is I said, there's got to be something greater or better than this. When I look at the bottom, the process of hitting bottom, what happened was I made a decision or I made a choice. That's how I came to, through that bottom. And that bottom was greater than myself. And that's why it says we came to believe, because I didn't think nothing could help me. I thought I was hopeless. And it says it right there in the literature in step one. Hopeless and useless. And then As a result of step 2, some alternatives came in, whether it was the jail, whether it was the institution, whether it was a church or whatever it was that gave me a choice other than what I was doing. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could, and the could is conditional. Condition that I open my mind. But I believe that some people be so scared. They be so scared that they don't want to feel like they're denouncing the God. But understand in recovery, that third step is there. And then as I look at my step 2 and I'm restored to sanity, I make a decision to turn my will and my life over to God as I understood him. And part of that decision is to work the whole program, including the fellowship. So wrapping this up, step 1, 2, and 3, with the focus on step 2, is that inside of people pleasing and don't want to sound like I'm not in recovery, I'll make this statement about this power greater than myself. So that being said, you know, I hear people say, thank God for the gift of desperation. Right there, that's a power greater than yourself. Desperation. Why? Because desperation has caused the individual to do something that they needed to do. Gratitude. Why do people make a gratitude list out? Somebody please tell me that. When people make a gratitude list, there's certain things that's on their list that they're grateful for because they feel grateful about an event that took place in their life that added on to their recovery. It's a restoration to sanity. And what about love? What about service? People talk about how service have helped them. Service to others, service to self. Fear, resentment, anger, and fear. And inside our pamphlet called The Triangle of Self-Obsession, and self-obsession is definitely a power greater than somebody else. It talks about the 3 components: resentment, anger, and fear. Resentment of the past, anger at the present, and fear of the future. All of those 6 powers greater than a person's self. And then there's 3 more: acceptance, love, and faith. Acceptance, love, and faith counters the resentment, the anger, and the fear. Power is greater than self. And I'll go on to say, once you get to that 11th step, you would not be able to have a spiritual awakening unless you have an effective step 2. If you don't have any type of faith, you will never have a step 3. And step 4 will show you why. And inside of step 5, it says we admitted to God, to ourselves, and another human being the exact nature of our wrongs and not the wrongs. And it's how the wrong came into being inside of step 5. And if I don't have a step 2, step 5 will be affected dearly. And in step 6, we talk about we became entirely ready to have God, as we understand him, remove these defects of character. And the defects of character are the powers greater than myself that's on the negative side of my inventory that I have used. because they're not active now. And then in step seven, it says, we humbly asked him to remove our shortcomings. Well, here it is. What is the shortcoming? A character defect that I'm using. Again, a defective character is something greater than myself, a power greater than myself, because I'm using it in the moment. For what? For my own self-centered behavior / benefit. Step 8. We made a list of all people we had harmed and became willing to make amends to them all. And they say making that list is what? Humility. The primary principle in step 8 is humility. And let me see, in step 8, it is open-mindedness. Open-mindedness is a spiritual principle there. And then in step 9 it says, in step 8 is willingness. No, I'm sorry, it's honesty. Power greater than myself. It says in 9, we made direct amends to such people wherever possible, and not whenever, wherever possible, except when to do so will injure them or others. And that whenever is to check the ego. And that's why I don't just run to people making I'm sorries. And step 9 is not about saying I'm sorry, it's about making amends, and that amends is the behavior. And it's an honest step. I have to be honest about what I'm doing. That's the primary principle. So I'm going to stop right here. And I want to say, take a look at what I'm saying. Take a look at what I'm saying. That we came to believe that step 2 gives the individual faith and choice. And faith, the absence of fear, and the choice to do something different. A choice to do something different. So with that, my name is Suni. I'd like to welcome everybody to the channel, Enlightenment through Addiction and Recovery. Tonight's topic is the second step. We came to believe that a power greater than ourselves could restore us to sanity. And with that, hit the subscribe button. Keep tuning in. And my next topic is going to be whatever you put in that box. All right, thank you.